Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today we're tackling one of the most stubborn images out there, the brutish, knuckle-dragging Neanderthal. You know the one, right?
Oh, absolutely. The club-wielding caveman. It's everywhere in pop culture.
Exactly. And it's been ingrained for generations. Barely human, almost ape-like.
And what's truly fascinating, really, is just how deeply that very simplified, often, frankly, derogatory idea got woven into how we thought about human evolution. I mean, think about it. Back in the 19th century, right, when the first fossils were found.
Yeah.
Well, one big-name anatomist basically described them as something like darkness characterized, whose thoughts never soared beyond those of the brute. That initial, prejudiced view just cast this incredibly long shadow.
And that's exactly what we want to unpack today. Our mission is a deep dive into the real story of Neanderthals. We're going way beyond those stereotypes.
Peeling back the layers, yeah, getting into their complex lives, their frankly surprising adaptations, and maybe the most astonishing part, their legacy in us, in modern humans.
Prepare to have some ideas challenged, folks.
We've pulled together a whole stack of sources for this. We've got archaeological finds from dusty caves, cutting-edge genetics reading our DNA's past.
Anatomical reconstructions, environmental data mapping their world.
Exactly. All of it. And the goal is really to pull out the most important bits, the surprising facts, so you can get, truly well-informed, way beyond the textbook basics.
Okay, let's start right there. Dismantling this myth, that primitive brute idea. You mentioned those early views. The first reconstructions, like that famous old man from La Chapelle-Saint.
Ah, yes, early 20th century. That one really cemented the image, didn't it? Hunched back, couldn't stand up straight.
But it was basically prejudice meeting limited data, right?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And it stuck.
Yeah.
But what did the modern 3D reconstructions, based on much more complete skeletons, actually show us?
Fully upright posture, just like us.
Exactly. Right from the start, the image we got was just fundamentally flawed. It really highlights how bias can shape science, doesn't it?
It really does. So, moving past posture, let's talk intelligence. Cognitive capacity. The old view versus the new evidence.
Well, the evidence completely flips the script. Let's start with their brains. They were exceptionally large.
Larger than ours.
On average, yes. Males around 1,600 cubic centimeters, females 1,460. That's roughly 30% larger than the average modern human brain.
Wow, 30%.
Now, you have to be careful. Brain size alone doesn't automatically mean smarter. It's more complex, structure, wiring.
Sure. But it definitely indicates significant cognitive capacity. Serious horsepower.
Definitely. At least on par with us, maybe more in terms of raw processing power.
And it wasn't just size, right? The shape was different, too.
Yeah, their skulls were less globular than ours, more rounded and elongated from back to front. And crucially, proportionately larger areas seem dedicated to sensory processing, smell, vision.
Vision, how so?
Get this, their eye sockets were about 15% larger than ours.
15%? What does that even mean, better eyesight?
Well, it strongly suggests enhanced visual acuity, yeah, and probably much better night vision. Which makes sense, right? Think about hunting in the low light of Ice Age Europe, the long winters.
So their brains were maybe fine-tuned for a world where seeing subtle things in the dark or picking up faint scents was absolutely critical for survival.
Precisely. And that sensory processing power lines up perfectly with what we're seeing in their behavior now.
Like what?
Well, the archaeology increasingly points to really sophisticated abilities, abstract thought, cooperation, planning, strategizing.
You see that in their weapons?
Definitely. Some required real foresight, understanding physics almost. And then there are these mysterious carvings, etchings, hinting at symbolism.
And coordinating hunts. Big game.
Huge game. Cave bears, woolly rhinos, mammoths even. You don't just stumble into killing a mammoth. That takes incredible planning, communication, teamwork, minimizing risk. These weren't just random encounters.
Right. Okay, so that leads nicely into their culture, symbolic behavior. You mentioned tools. Tell us more. They weren't just banging rocks together.
Oh, absolutely not. They were masters of toolmaking. They used something called the levallois technique.
Levallois? What's that?
It's a really advanced method. You carefully prepare a stone core, like a flint nodule, so you can strike off consistently sharp, perfectly shaped flakes. Very versatile knives, scrapers, spear points.
Requires real skill and thinking ahead.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But it goes beyond that. There's this whole other tool tradition, the Mikokian. Distinctive stuff, asymmetrical hand axes, keel-shaped scrapers, these unique blades.
And what's special about the Mikokian?
The distribution. It's vast. You find these tools across huge distances, which tells us it wasn't just skill, it was consistent cultural transmission, like passing down knowledge over generations and miles.
How vast are we talking?
Well, tools found in Chegarskaya Cave way out in Siberia, they're virtually identical to tools found thousands of kilometers away in Germany, Poland, the Carpathians.
Wow, that's like finding the same exact artisan craft style on different continents today. It implies shared culture teaching.
A deep capacity for learning and transmitting ideas, exactly. And their resourcefulness went way beyond stone tools. Fire, for instance.
They used fire, obviously.
Yes, but maybe more than just for warmth and cooking. There's evidence, like at the Neumarkt Nord site in Germany.
What did they find there?
Well, they found these spikes in charcoal deposits in the soil. And these spikes lined up perfectly with periods when Neanderthals were known to be in the area, and also when the landscape was more open, fewer trees.
And when the Neanderthals left?
The charcoal spikes decreased, and the forest grew back. It really suggests they might have been intentionally using fire to manage the landscape.
Like controlled burns, to clear undergrowth, make it better for hunting.
Exactly. Creating grasslands for game, maybe driving prey. It's like ancient landscape engineering. Shows real foresight and understanding of their environment.
That's amazing. But Neumarkt Nord had something even more. Well, mind-blowing, didn't it? The fat factory.
Ah, yes. The fat factory. That discovery really throws the primitive brute idea out the window. It wasn't just a campsite. It seems to have been a specialized location, specifically designed to extract fat from animal bones.
How? Just smashing them.
Smashing and boiling, systematically.
Why was fat so important? I mean, meat is meat, right?
Not quite. Neanderthals were hypercarnivores. Maybe 70% of their diet was meat. But if you only eat lean meat, you can actually get sick. It's called protein poisoning.
Seriously?
Yeah, it can be debilitating, even lethal. They needed a massive amount of calories. Daily estimates are like 4,500 to 6,700 calories, especially in the cold. Fat provides those dense calories and avoids the protein issue.
So this factory wasn't just about getting a snack, it was crucial for survival.
Absolutely. And it shows incredible planning, organization, and efficient resource use. They'd select the long bones, rich in marrow, from big animals, horses, deer, or rocks.
And boil them. How? Did they have pots?
Probably not ceramic pots like we think of. Maybe containers made from birch bark or animal skins, even stomachs. Suspended over a fire filled with water. Then crush the bones, boil them for hours, skim off the rendered fat.
That takes foresight, understanding materials, maybe even dividing up the work.
It speaks volumes about their intelligence. They weren't just living day to day, they were planning for the long haul, for the group's nutritional needs.
Okay, so sophisticated tools, environmental management, resource planning. What about the more symbolic side? Rituals, beliefs.
There's abundant evidence for that too, suggesting a really rich inner world. Take Shanidar Cave in Iraq, probably the most famous example.
Before burial?
Exactly. A Neanderthal male found buried, apparently with clumps of different types of flower pollen. Now, there's still debate, maybe rodents brought the pollen in, sure. But the concentration and types of flowers make many researchers think it was intentional, suggesting, emotional significance, maybe mourning, compassion, a ritual offering.
And it's not the only burial site.
Oh, no. We have clear, deliberate burials elsewhere. Vashopelzan, Kabar Caves in Israel, bodies carefully placed in specific positions. That suggests respect, maybe even belief in an afterlife. It's not just discarding a body.
And art. Did they create art?
That's another area where the picture has dramatically changed.
Yeah.
In El Castillo Cave in Spain, there are these amazing red ochre stencils. Hand shapes, abstract dots, and lines.
And the dating.
That's the crucial part. They've been dated to over 60,000 years ago.
60,000. But wasn't that before modern humans, Homo sapiens, arrived in that part of Europe?
Exactly. It significantly predates the generally accepted arrival date, which strongly points to Neanderthal authorship.
So they were making abstract art. That implies abstract thought, identity, ritual.
All of the above.
Yeah.
It completely contradicts the old stereotype. And we find other things too. Shell beads like Nassarius shells at sites like Skull Cave, maybe for adornment, aesthetics.
Maybe even trade.
And pigments.
Ochre.
Lots of ochre. Used for processing hides? Sure. But likely also for body painting, decoration. These are all hallmarks of complex thought, culture, symbolism, miles away from the grunting brute.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. Their physical bodies, they were built differently, weren't they? Built for their world.
Oh, absolutely. Their physical adaptations were immense. They're incredibly formidable.
Yeah.
Generally shorter, heavier than us. Males maybe averaged 83 kilos. female 66.
So stockier.
Very stocky. And their bones were extraordinarily robust. Dense, sometimes twice as dense as modern human bones.
Twice as dense? Why?
Indicates incredible strength, resilience to injury. And their muscularity, it must have been immense. You hear descriptions like Popeye-like arms.
Popeye arms. From what?
Probably from the repetitive, powerful motions involved in their hunting style, thrusting heavy spears in close-quarters combat with huge animals.
Close quarters. That sounds dangerous.
Extremely. And their strength was off the charts. Some estimates suggest a male Neanderthal could maybe bench press up to 500 pounds. It's 200 kilos without training. Females, maybe 350 pounds, 160 kilos.
That's elite powerlifter territory.
Pretty much. And they needed that power for their hunting strategy, ambush tactics, getting right up close to mammoths, rhinos, giant deer, subduing them physically.
And the evidence supports this dangerous lifestyle.
Absolutely. We see it on their skeletons. Shanidar 3, for example, has a puncture wound on a rib, looks like a stab from a prey animal. And the sheer rate of healed trauma, broken bones, crushed skulls.
They got hurt a lot.
A lot. But here's the thing. An astonishing number, maybe 74% of individuals studied, show evidence of having survived these violent encounters.
Survived? How?
It underscores their incredible toughness, yes, but it also strongly hints at something else. Group care. Someone had to be looking after these injured individuals for them to heal from such severe wounds. More evidence of social complexity.
Wow. Okay, super strong, tough. What about their insides? Lungs, breathing.
Also highly adapted. Their chests were barrel-shaped, wider rib cages, not just for looks. They housed significantly larger lungs, maybe 20% greater capacity than ours on average.
20%.
And one specimen, Kibara 2, might have had a lung capacity around 9 liters.
Yeah.
Just astounding. Needed for massive oxygen intake.
And their noses, they always look big in reconstruction.
They were long and wide, yeah.
Yeah.
Highly specialized. They could move air incredibly fast, maybe 100% faster than our noses, while also warming and humidifying it efficiently.
Why so fast?
To fuel their extremely high metabolic rates, they were burning energy like furnaces, especially in the cold. They needed a constant massive supply of warmed, moist air.
So, powerful bodies, big lungs, efficient noses, were they built for speed or endurance?
More for explosive bursts of energy, it seems. Not so much for long-distance running like early Homo sapiens might have been.
How do we know?
Their lower limbs. Anatomically, they were optimized for power. Long heel bones, shorter Achilles tendons, probably a higher proportion of fast-twitch muscle fibers. Great for quick acceleration, powerful sprints over short distances. Perfect for their ambush hunting style in forests or broken terrain.
But maybe not so good later on.
That's the theory. When the climate changed and much of Europe became open tundra, that ambush style, that explosive power over short distances, might have become a disadvantage compared to Homo sapiens' endurance capabilities. Better suited for chasing animals over long distances in open landscapes, their specialization became a liability.
Fascinating. Okay, this brings us to maybe one of the biggest questions, and you hinted at it earlier. Communication. Language. Did Neanderthals speak?
Ah, the million-dollar question. It's one of the most compelling and, hotly debated topics.
Well,
And the picture is getting clearer, but still debated.
so what's the first thing we need to consider here?
Well, first, we need to be really clear about the difference between speech and language. They're often used interchangeably, but they're distinct.
Okay, speech is.
Speech is the physical act, the mechanics of making sounds, forming words, vocalization.
And language.
Language is much more complex, more abstract. It's using those sounds, those words, to express sophisticated ideas, to represent concepts, talk about things that aren't right here, right now. It involves symbolic thought, syntax, grammar.
Got it. So where does the evidence point for Neanderthals? Let's start with speech, the physical ability.
The anatomical and genetic evidence for speech production is actually getting pretty strong. Really strong, in fact.
How so? Genetics.
Yeah, there's this crucial gene called FOXP2. It's like a master switch involved in speech and controlling the fine facial muscle movements needed for clear articulation. Mutations cause serious language problems in humans.
Okay. And Neanderthals.
Here's the kicker. Both us, Homo sapiens, and Neanderthal share two specific key evolutionary mutations in FOXP2.
We share them. What does that imply?
It strongly suggests that our last common ancestor, living maybe 400,000 to 800,000 years ago, already had the basic biological toolkit for articulate speech. Some even think earlier hominins like Homo erectus might have had rudimentary language 1 million years ago.
Wow. So the potential for speech goes way back. What about the anatomy itself? The throat, the voice box?
Another huge piece of the puzzle is the hyoid bone.
The hyoid.
Yeah, it's this small, delicate, U-shaped bone in your throat. It's unique because it doesn't connect directly to any other bone. It anchors the muscles and ligaments you need for speaking and swallowing.
And we found one from a Neanderthal.
Yes. In the 1980s, that Kibrad 2 skeleton from Israel, the one with the big lungs, it had its hyoid bone intact. Incredibly rare find, as it's so fragile.
Was it different from ours?
That's the amazing part. It was virtually identical in shape and structure to a modern human hyoid.
Identical. So they had the same basic throat structure needed for speech.
It certainly looks that way. The fundamental machinery was there.
Okay, so the genes suggest the capability, the hyoid bones suggest the structure.
Yeah.
What would they have actually sounded like? Was their voice box, the larynx, different?
It seems it was. While structured for vocalization, the Neanderthal larynx was likely a bit larger and maybe positioned slightly differently than ours. It would affect the acoustics, the phonetic quality. So while they could definitely produce the sounds needed for speech, the actual words might have sounded, well, different to our ears. Maybe deeper, more resonant, hard to know exactly, but definitely capable of vocalizing complex sounds.
So they could make the sounds. Could they hear the sounds properly, especially the complex sounds needed for language?
That's the other side of the coin, and the evidence there is also really compelling, maybe even more so.
How can we possibly know how they heard?
Through high-resolution CT scans of their fossilized ear bones, researchers created these incredibly detailed 3D models of the inner and middle ear structures. They compared Neanderthals, early Homo sapiens, and even an older ancestor, Homo heidelbergensis.
And what did the scans show?
They showed that Neanderthals had hearing abilities remarkably similar to ours. They could hear across a similar frequency range, including sounds between 4 and 5 kilohertz, right in the sweet spot for human speech.
Okay, similar range. But what's the really significant part?
The really significant part is their ability to perceive consonant sounds.
Consonants. Why are they so important?
Because consonants carry a huge amount of information in human language. Think about it, most primate calls are very vowel-heavy. Our speech relies heavily on distinguishing subtle differences between consonants like P, T, K, F. These sounds mostly occur at higher frequencies, above 3 kilohertz.
And Neanderthals could hear those frequencies well.
Yes, the studies showed their hearing was particularly sensitive in that higher frequency range necessary for consonants. This ability to clearly distinguish consonants is a key feature that separates complex human language from simpler animal communication. It allows for a much wider vocabulary and more complex information transfer.
So the capacity to produce complex sounds and the capacity to hear and distinguish them, that sounds a lot like they had the biology for language.
It strongly implies sophisticated vocal communication, yes,
Yeah.
far beyond simple grunts.
So why is there still debate? If the anatomy and auditory evidence is so strong.
Well, some scholars are still cautious. The main hesitation often comes down to the archaeological record. They argue we don't see the same kind of widespread, unequivocal evidence of symbolic language. Lots of complex art, writing-like symbols that we associate with later Homo sapiens.
But could there be other reasons for that?
Absolutely. There are complicating factors. Neanderthals lived in much smaller, more isolated groups than Homo sapiens often did. Their overall population density was low.
Meaningless interaction.
Probably less frequent interaction between distant groups.
Yeah.
And when they did interact, they might have spoken different dialects, maybe even entirely different languages. That kind of fragmentation makes it harder for complex symbolic traditions to spread widely and, crucially, to survive archaeologically compared to larger, more interconnected populations.
That makes sense. But their behavior, the tools, the hunting, the burials, those carvings, doesn't that stuff require complex communication?
That's the counter-argument, and it's a powerful one. Think about coordinating those mammoth hunts or transmitting the knowledge to make those identical Mikokian tools across continents, or even organizing potential tribal conflict, which the Shanidar 3 stab wound might hint at.
You need to talk about that stuff. Plan it. Explain it.
Exactly. It all strongly suggests abstract thought and the absolute necessity for advanced communication. As one expert put it, looking at the whole picture, they must have been able to communicate in a pretty nuanced way.
So the big unknown is just what their language was like, the vocabulary, the grammar.
Precisely. We have strong evidence they had the biological capacity for speech and complex hearing, and their behavior screams complex communication. But the actual content, the sound, the meaning, that's lost to time, unfortunately. But the picture is undeniably one of intellect and communication, not primitive silence.
It really transforms the image. Okay, so we've got intelligent, adaptable, culturally sophisticated beings with likely complex communication. And this leads us directly into their relationship with us, with Homo sapiens, the connection, interbreeding.
Yes. This is uh, truly one of the most revolutionary discoveries in the last couple of decades. Paradigm-shifting stuff. The genetic evidence is just undeniable now.
What is the core finding?
The core finding is that virtually all non-African modern humans today carry Neanderthal DNA, somewhere between 1% and 3%. Typically.
1 to 3% in
Yeah.
everyone outside of Africa.
Pretty much, yeah. Across Europeans, Asians, Native Americans.
Yeah.
It's a clear genetic signature. And this only became possible thanks to the sequencing of the Neanderthal genome back in 2010. Groundbreaking work by the Max Planck Institute.
Finally open a window into that shared history. So when and where did this mixing happen?
The main theory, the most accepted one, is that the primary mixing events happened between about 40,000 and 60,000 years ago.
Okay, and where?
Primarily as Homo sapiens groups expanded out of Africa and moved into Europe and Asia, where Neanderthals were already living. They met, and well, they mingled.
Were these just brief encounters?
Probably not just brief. We have evidence, for instance, from the Caucasus region suggesting ongoing interaction and likely interbreeding for maybe nearly 7,000 years, around 47,000 years ago, so potentially long periods of contact in some areas.
And you said non-African populations. What about people in Africa?
Well, it gets more complex. It turns out that even some modern African populations do have traces of Neanderthal DNA.
How? If the mixing happened outside Africa?
The likely explanation is back migration, meaning Homo sapiens who had already interbred with Neanderthals in Eurasia later migrated back into Africa, probably around 20,000 years ago or so, bringing those Neanderthal genes with them.
So the genetic legacy is even more widespread than we thought. What about the amount of interbreeding? Is 1-3% the whole story?
Well, that's where some debate comes in. David Reich, a top geneticist at Harvard, has put forward a more provocative view. He suggests, based on his analyses, that maybe 10 to 20% of the actual ancestors of non-Africans alive today were Neanderthals.
10 to 20%, that's way more than 1-3% of the DNA.
Exactly. It implies the interbreeding wasn't just occasional, but widespread and frequent over time. It led Reich to controversially suggest that non-Africans today are, in a way, essentially evolved Neanderthals.
Wow, that really blurs the lines. Us and them becomes complicated.
Very complicated. It forces us to rethink species boundaries and what human even means in this context.
And do we have physical evidence of these hybrids, not just genetic traces?
We do, or at least very strong candidates.
Hmm.
The School 1 child skeleton from School Cave in Israel is a key example.
How old is that one?
Around 140,000 years old. Much older than that main 40, 60,000 year window.
And what's special about it?
It's this fascinating mosaic. The child, maybe 3 to 5 years old, had a jawbone, a mandible that looked very Neanderthal-like.
Right.
Robust, specific shape. But parts of its skull, the parietal and temporal bones and its inner ear structure, looked much more like Homo sapiens.
A mix of features in one individual.
Exactly. The most compelling explanation is that School 1 was a direct hybrid, which pushes back the timeline for interbreeding, at least in the Levant, by tens of thousands of years.
And does that fit with other finds in the area?
It does now, especially with the more recent Nishur Ramla hominin discovery, also in Israel, dated around 140,000 to 120,000 years ago.
What was Nishur Ramla?
A previously unknown type of archaic human. They had this mix of Neanderthal features and even older archaic traits. And crucially, they were using Mousterian tools, the kind usually associated with Neanderthals.
So the Levant was like a melting pot. Different groups meeting, mixing genes, sharing technology.
That's exactly what it looks like. A real hub of interaction long before the main wave out of Africa.
And wasn't there that other incredible hybrid found involving Denisovans?
Ah yes, Denny. The Denisovan Neanderthal hybrid girl, found in Denisova Cave in Siberia. Her genetics showed she had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father.
2 different archaic groups having a child together.
It was mind-blowing. Proved unequivocally that hybridization wasn't just a one-off between us and Neanderthals, but likely happened between various archaic groups. It shattered assumptions about reproductive isolation.
So we mixed. What did we actually inherit from them? What Neanderthal traits live on in us?
A whole fascinating mix of things, some visible, some hidden. Physically, Neanderthal genes are linked to things like skin pigmentation and hair type.
Like?
Well, some variants associated with red or blonde hair, lighter skin tones, and even increased body hair found in Europeans and Asians seem to have Neanderthal origins.
Lighter skin makes sense for adapting to less sunny northern latitudes, right?
Exactly. And eye color, too. Genes like OCA2 and AGRC2, strongly linked to blue eyes, show evidence of Neanderthal input. This suggests these traits might have already been present in Eurasia thanks to Neanderthals, not just evolved in Homo sapiens after they arrived.
So some typically European features might actually have deeper Neanderthal roots.
That's what the genetics seem to suggest. Now, it's important to tread carefully here. This area can get tangled in politics, with some trying to downplay Neanderthal contributions for ideological reasons.
Right. We should be clear we're just reporting the scientific findings.
Precisely. The science points to Neanderthal variants contributing to pigmentation traits in ancient Europeans and Asians going back tens of thousands of years. It's part of the complex genetic tapestry.
Okay, beyond looks, what about health, behavior?
This is where it gets really interesting and sometimes subtle. We inherited gene variants that affect things like blood clotting.
Faster clotting. Is that good or bad?
Probably good back then.
Yeah.
Helpful for surviving injuries in a dangerous world. Today, though, that same variant slightly increases the risk of strokes. Swings and roundabouts.
Anything else health-related?
Yes, one specific Neanderthal variant has been linked to a significantly higher risk, maybe 2 to 4 times higher, of developing severe COVID-19.
Wow. A direct link from ancient genes to a modern pandemic.
Indeed. And other variants seem linked to things like a propensity for nicotine addiction, ancient roots for modern vulnerabilities.
What about the brain? Did Neanderthal DNA affect our brain function or emotions?
It seems so. Neanderthal variants appear to influence aspects of how our brains develop, how different regions connect, something called synaptic plasticity, which is key for learning and memory, even sleep cycles and how we perceive pain.
And specific brain regions.
Yeah, regions involved in social processing, like the prefrontal cortex, think decision-making, social behavior, and the limbic system, which is deep in emotion and memory. Neanderthal genes play a role there, too.
This leads to a huge question. Could their DNA influence our emotions, like anxiety, empathy?
It's looking increasingly likely. There are Neanderthal-derived alleles gene variants linked to an increased risk for anxiety-related behaviors, heightened emotional reactivity, stronger responses to stress or negative things.
Which genes are involved?
Genes like SLC6A4, which deals with serotonin transport, crucial for mood, and others like CR1 and FKBP5, involved in the stress response system, the HPA axis.
So inheriting these could make someone more jumpy, more sensitive to threats.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And think about it, in the Ice Age, that could be highly adaptive. Being more attuned to danger, more vigilant, that's a survival advantage. It's like an enhanced danger radar.
Okay, so maybe anxiety has ancient roots as a survival tool. What about the flip side? Positive emotions, empathy, bonding.
This is perhaps the most profound connection. There's growing evidence linking Neanderthal DNA to modern human empathy. Those same gene regions, like near SLC6A4, might also enhance emotional depth and sensitivity.
And didn't you mention oxytocin earlier, the love hormone?
Yes, the gene for the oxytocin receptor, OXTR. Neanderthal variants of this gene seem to influence bonding, trust, social memory, even nurturing and parental behaviors.
So in their small, tight-knit groups, this would have been vital. Stronger family ties, group loyalty.
Absolutely crucial for survival. Reinforcing those bonds would have been paramount.
And creativity, neurodiversity. Any links there?
This is fascinating, too. Some gene variants linked to conditions we now might label as autism, affecting social interaction, sensory processing, focus, or even repression, also seem to correlate with positive traits. Like enhanced creativity, acute sensory awareness, high emotional intelligence, incredible attention to detail, superior pattern recognition.
So traits we associate with neurodiversity today might have actually been valuable skills back then.
Exactly. Think about it. Someone with intense focus for toolmaking. Someone with heightened senses for tracking or spotting danger. These weren't necessarily deficits. They could have been real assets, contributing unique cognitive styles vital for the group's success. Diversity was likely strength.
It paints a much richer picture of their contribution. But the interbreeding itself, it wasn't always straightforward, right? There were challenges, controversies.
Right. It likely wasn't all simple pairings. Ludovic Slimak, a French archaeologist, has proposed this failed alliances theory.
Failed alliances.
He suggests some interbreeding might have come from more pragmatic arrangements, maybe not always romantic. like exchanging women between neighboring groups, perhaps during times of stress, or to forge fragile social ties, especially if the groups were quite distinct culturally.
And biologically, were there issues? Could hybrids always reproduce?
There's some intriguing genetic evidence, though still debated, suggesting potential incompatibility. Maybe male hybrids in particular had reduced fertility or were sterile, or perhaps they just didn't survive as well.
What would that lead to?
Well, it could help explain a weird pattern we see in the genetics. Neanderthal Y chromosomes passed only father to son, and their mitochondrial DNA passed only from mothers, seem to have been largely replaced by modern human versions over time.
Replaced, huh?
It implies that while lots of interbreeding happened, maybe it was disproportionately Homo sapiens males mating with Neanderthal females over a long period, possibly stretching way back, like 270,000 to 100,000 years ago.
Mm.
Their offspring would carry the Homo sapiens Y and the Neanderthal DNA initially, but subsequent generations mixing within the larger Homo sapiens pool could dilute or replace those Neanderthal lines.
So the gene flow wasn't necessarily even or reciprocal?
It seems asymmetrical, yes. Here's another puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
While virtually all non-Africans today have Neanderthal DNA, when we look at the DNA of late Neanderthals, say from 40,000, 50,000 years ago, right before they vanished,
Yeah. Do they have our DNA?
they don't seem to have modern Homo sapiens DNA from that recent period. They only show traces of DNA from much older, archaic Homo sapiens groups, maybe from earlier, more limited encounters.
That's weird. What could explain that?
It's complex. Maybe it reflects population dynamics, maybe different social structures, or perhaps it hints at conflict scenarios where Homo sapiens groups were dominant, maybe killing Neanderthal males, but integrating females and children, which would pass on Neanderthal mtDNA, but not Homo sapiens Y DNA, into the Neanderthal line.
So a mix of cooperation, competition, mixing, conflict, a very human story.
Exactly. A messy, complicated, deeply intertwined origin story, not a simple replacement.
Okay, let's broaden out again. Where did Neanderthals actually live? What was their range? And how mobile were they? We tend to think of them just in Ice Age Europe.
They were far more widespread and mobile than that classic image suggests. Incredibly resourceful people. Their known geographic range is enormous.
How big?
It stretches from way out in Western Europe, France, Spain, Britain, right across Central Europe, the Middle East, the Levant,
Further east?
all the way into Russia and the Altai Mountains of Siberia. And there are even hints, based on some fossil skull features like inner ear shapes found in China, that they might have reached even further east.
Yeah.
Still debated, but possible.
Siberia, that's already huge. And did they just stay put, or did they move around within that range?
They definitely moved. We have concrete evidence of surprisingly long-distance migrations. The findings at Chegarskaya Cave in Siberia are mind-blowing in this respect.
That's the place with the tools identical to European ones.
Exactly. The Neanderthals there, living around 59,000 to 49,000 years ago, weren't local Siberians. Their genetics and their specific Makokian tools show they were migrants.
Migrants from where?
From Eastern Europe, likely the area around Crimea or the Carpathians. That's a journey of over 3,000 kilometers.
3,000 kilometers through Ice Age landscapes.
Yes. And it wasn't just a few wanderers. The evidence suggests a whole group moved, bringing their entire culture, their specific way of making tools, their way of life with them. It's like a purposeful transplanting of a community.
That implies incredible resilience and planning. Any other examples of big moves?
Well, there's Shukka Cave in the Judean Mountains near Jerusalem. They found a Neanderthal child's tooth there, alongside distinctive tools called Nubian levallois tools.
What's significant about that?
It suggests a significant southward expansion of their range, much further south than previously thought. Shukba is only about 100 miles from the Red Sea, tantalizingly close to Africa. And finding them using Nubian levallois tools challenges the old idea that only Homo sapiens made that specific type, more sharing or convergence of technologies.
Okay, pushing south. Did they ever cross water? Could they reach islands?
This is super provocative, but there's tantalizing evidence. Neanderthal-style tools have been found on the island of Crete.
Crete, but isn't that an island separated by sea?
Yes, and it has been an island for something like 5 million years. So finding those tools there raises the incredible possibility that Neanderthals could manage short sea crossings.
How? Boats? Rafts?
We don't know. Maybe simple watercraft. Or maybe it just points to their advanced planning abilities. The same kind needed to coordinate massive hunts could potentially be applied to figuring out how to cross water, perhaps during periods of lower sea level, when distances were shorter. It opens up a whole new perspective on their capabilities.
So potentially much further north, southeast, and maybe even across water. How far north could they have gone? Isn't that hard to track?
It is very hard. Glaciers tend to scour away ancient landscapes and archaeological sites up north, and they likely lived more in the open there, fewer caves to preserve remains.
So how are researchers tackling this?
Through projects like Neanderthal, they use something called ecological niche modeling.
Niche modeling
Yeah.
sounds fancy.
It kind of is. They take databases of all known Neanderthal sites, combine that with incredibly detailed climate reconstructions going back 800,000 years, and they build a model of the Neanderthals' preferred environment, their ideal temperature range, rainfall, vegetation type, mapping their comfort zone through time.
What does that model reveal about the Ice Age stereotype?
It challenges it. While they were definitely cold adapted compared to us tropical apes, the models show they actually preferred warmer, milder periods in places within their range. They expanded most during interglacials. So maybe warm-loving, cold-adapted is a better description.
And how far north did this comfort zone reach during warm periods?
This is amazing.
Hmm.
Around 120,000 years ago, during a warm interglacial, the models project their suitable habitat expanded dramatically northward, possibly as far as central Sweden.
Sweden. How could they even get there? Ice sheets.
Lower sea levels, Doggerland, that landmass connecting Britain to the continent, was exposed. They could
Yeah.
have walked right into Scandinavia.
Wow. What would life have been like for Neanderthals way up there?
Very different. Open environments, steppe, tundra, highly dependent on large herds. Reindeer, horses, bison, maybe mammoths, and woolly rhinos too. We know they hunted elephants intentionally further south in Neumark Nord, so they had the skills for megafauna.
So how do we find actual proof they were in places like Sweden?
That's the challenge. Researchers are looking for specific types of sites, lost paleo lakes, where preservation might be good, like at Neumark Nord. The submerged landscape of Doggerland is another huge potential area. And maybe environmental DNA.
eDNA. Finding their DNA in soil, even without bones.
Exactly. It's a new frontier, but it holds promise for detecting their presence in these harder-to-reach northern limits.
So incredibly adaptable, widespread, mobile, yet around 40,000 years ago, they disappear from the record. What happened? Why did they go extinct?
It's the ultimate puzzle, isn't it? And the answer seems to be, it wasn't just one thing. It was likely a combination of factors, multiple stressors hitting them at once, or in quick succession. A perfect storm.
Climate change must have been a big one, right? The Ice Age fluctuations.
Huge and relentless. We're talking about the peak glacial period, roughly 65,000 to 25,000 years ago. The climate changes weren't gradual. They were often rapid, severe, and abrupt. Huge swings in temperature, vegetation shifts.
Leaving no time to adapt or recover.
Exactly. And specifically, around 50,000 years ago, large parts of northern Europe shifted dramatically from the forests they were adapted to into cold, open tundra. This likely fragmented their populations, pushing them into smaller forest refuges.
While Homo sapiens were maybe better suited to that open tundra.
Potentially, yes. Our ancestors might have had adaptations or hunting techniques better suited for those wide open spaces.
Okay, climate stress. What else?
Volcanoes. Massive volcanic eruptions.
Plural. More than one.
Yes, it seems around 40,000 years ago, there might have been multiple large eruptions happening almost simultaneously or very close together in Italy and the Caucasus Mountains.
Like the Campanian ignimbrite. I've heard of that one.
That's the big one, near Naples. Possibly the most powerful eruption in Europe in the last 200,000 years. An absolute monster.
What would the impact have been?
Devastating. Locally, it would have wiped out any Neanderthal groups nearby. But the broader impact was huge clouds of ash and sulfur aerosols shot into the atmosphere.
Blocking sunlight, causing cooling.
Yes, widespread cooling, drastic changes in weather patterns, and the ashfall itself. It created these sterile layers on the ground, killing off vegetation. No plants mean no plant-eating animals, which means no prey for Neanderthals. An ecological collapse.
Climate disaster, volcanic catastrophe. Surely that's enough.
Apparently not. There was also this bizarre cosmic event, the Lachamps geomagnetic excursion.
Geomagnetic, the Earth's magnetic field.
Exactly. Between about 42,200 and 41,500 years ago, the Earth's magnetic field weakened dramatically, dropped to maybe only 5% of its usual strength.
And the magnetic field protects us from radiation.
Precisely. Cosmic rays from space, charged particles from the sun. With the shield weakened, Earth got blasted with much higher levels of radiation.
What does that do to life on the surface?
It's bad news. The weakened field led to ozone layer depletion, especially at higher latitudes. So a surge in harmful UV radiation plus more ionizing radiation hitting the ground.
Higher latitudes, where
Yeah.
Neanderthals mostly lived.
Exactly. They were right in the radiation hotspot. Think about the potential health effects. DNA damage, higher mutation rates, increased cancer risk, cataracts, suppressed immune systems, making them vulnerable to diseases.
Reproductive problems, neurological issues.
All possible. Higher infant mortality, maybe cognitive impairment. It would have been a deeply unhealthy environment.
People might have actually seen weird things, auroras.
Potentially.
Yeah.
Auroras might have been visible way down towards the equator, shocking light shows in the sky. Some even speculate the stressful period, forcing people into caves for shelter from the radiation, might be linked to that burst of early cave art around 42,000 years ago, like at El Castillo.
Did Homo sapiens have an advantage during this?
Quite possibly. At that time, many Homo sapiens populations were still concentrated in more tropical regions.
Where the effects were less severe?
Likely. Denser ozone layer closer to the equator, thicker atmosphere offering more protection. And crucially, darker skin pigmentation provides natural protection against UV radiation. Neanderthals, likely having adapted lighter skin for northern latitudes, would have been more vulnerable. Another factor tipping the scales.
Okay, so climate, volcanoes, radiation, and then finally us, competition with Homo sapiens.
That seems to be the final piece of the puzzle. Some call it the 1-2 punch. The environment was already degrading, populations were stressed, fragmented, and then Homo sapiens arrives in greater numbers, expanding across Europe.
Were we just better, smarter, more adaptable?
It's debated, but Homo sapiens likely had some advantages, even if subtle. Maybe more complex social networks for sharing resources and information over wider areas. Perhaps slightly more flexible toolkits or hunting strategies. Maybe more efficient communication methods. Greater population density, meaning more resilience to local setbacks.
While Neanderthals were maybe more stuck in their ways. Lower population.
Possibly. Their overall numbers seem to have always been quite low. Maybe only 5,000 to 70,000 individuals across that vast range at any one time. That makes any population inherently vulnerable. Some researchers suggest they might have been slightly less adaptable, maybe more neophobic, resistant to change, compared to the highly innovative Homo sapiens.
Is there direct evidence of us pushing them out or replacing them?
It's complex. There's that weird site in the Rhone Valley in France around 54,000 years ago. A brief appearance of Homo sapiens with distinctive tools, the Neonian culture. Then they vanish, and Neanderthal tools come back for a while.
Like a failed first attempt. A contested border.
Maybe. It suggests Homo sapiens didn't just sweep through instantly. It might have been a fluctuating frontier, with periods of coexistence, competition, maybe occasional gene exchange, those failed alliances, perhaps before Homo sapiens eventually became dominant.
So not one single cause, but a cascade of pressures finally overwhelming them.
That seems to be the most likely scenario. Environmental stress weakened them, and competition with incoming modern humans was the final pressure they couldn't withstand as a distinct population.
But as we've discussed, they didn't completely vanish, did they? Their legacy endures.
Exactly. And this is maybe the most profound takeaway. In a very real sense, they didn't become totally extinct. They live on. In that 1-3% of DNA carried by billions of people today, we are, in part, them, a mosaic of ancient traits.
It really does blur the lines between us and them, challenges neat species definitions.
Absolutely. It forces us to see human evolution as much more interconnected, more like a braided stream than separate branches.
And that legacy isn't just physical traits, it's deeper, shaping our inner worlds, our emotions, behaviors.
That's the cutting edge right now. The idea that human intelligence evolved partly to manage complex social relationships. The social brain hypothesis, well, it clearly applies to Neanderthals too. They faced intense social pressures, needing cooperation, communication, care within their groups. Their brains were shaped by that.
And empathy. We talked about the burials, the care for the injured. Shouldn't our one living for years with severe disabilities?
Those archaeological clues strongly suggest compassion, grief, emotional awareness, deep evolutionary roots for empathy. And now the genetics are starting to align with that picture.
Those genes influencing the oxytocin receptor, bonding, trust.
Yes, OXCR. And other genes involved in behavioral development, emotional memory, resilience, like ADSL and NTRK2, They show Neanderthal contributions, and fMRI studies are even showing how Neanderthal variants can alter activity in brain regions key for empathy, like the amygdala and anterior cingulate cortex, maybe leading to heightened emotional sensitivity.
Which would be vital for group cohesion, right? Keeping the small group working together.
Absolutely essential for survival in their world, and this likely extended to parenting, too.
Neanderthal parenting. What do we know?
The evidence points towards it being emotionally rich, socially complex, maybe shared caregiving alloparenting with strong kinship ties, reinforced by those genetic predispositions for bonding. They faced immense challenges, but likely endured through powerful bonds of care and commitment.
And that anxiety link, the hypervigilance, also part of this emotional legacy.
It seems so. That emotional radar, tuned by genes like SLC6A4 and CR1FKBP5, was a vital survival tool, being highly attuned to danger. But maybe, just maybe, those same traits also foster creativity, problem-solving, emotional diversity as an asset.
Which connects back to neurodiversity. Traits linked to autism or depression potentially being adaptive cognitive styles in the past.
Exactly. Intense focus for toolmaking, pattern recognition for tracking. These weren't necessarily flaws, but valuable contributions to the group's toolkit. Our diverse minds are part of this rich, ancient inheritance.
So pulling it all together, what does this really mean for how we see ourselves as human?
It means that to be human isn't about being separate or pure. It's about connection. Connection across time. Connection between different groups. We're a tapestry woven from many threads, and Neanderthals are a significant integral part of that weave.
So identity isn't about lineage purity.
No. Maybe it's more about the depth of feeling, the continuity of these core emotional capacities stretching way back into our shared past.
Empathy, compassion, our emotional range, not just Homo sapiens inventions, but a shared blueprint, enriched by that ancient mixing.
That's what the evidence increasingly suggests. A shared emotional core, perhaps deepened and diversified by contributions from our Neanderthal cousins. We carry that legacy whenever we connect with each other.
What an incredible journey. We started with the brute, the caricature.
And ended up with intelligent, sophisticated, adaptable people with complex cultures, likely complex language.
Who managed their environment, undertook epic journeys, maybe even crossed seas.
Who faced down unimaginable environmental catastrophes and cosmic events.
And who ultimately didn't vanish but became part of us, living on in our genes, shaping our health, our minds, our emotions.
From their capacity for speech and hearing complex sounds, to the legacy of their immune system genes, their adaptations to cold, even their influence on our social bonding and emotional sensitivity. It's a profound connection.
We tracked their vast range, the evidence for migration, the push into surprisingly northern latitudes, and the complex puzzle of their disappearance, that storm of climate change, volcanoes, radiation, and competition.
Highlighting their resilience, but also their ultimate vulnerability in the face of multiple compounding pressures.
But ending on that note of integration, not extinction, the blurring of lines, the shared heritage.
And the powerful idea that core human traits like empathy might be far older than just Homo sapiens.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. If our capacity to feel deeply, to connect, to nurture, has roots in this ancient inheritance shared with Neanderthals, what does that truly say about the definition of humanity?
Perhaps empathy isn't a recent development. Perhaps it's much older than humanity itself, a fundamental survival tool forged way back in the Ice Age, shared across ancient lineages.
Think about that. How does this deep dive reshape your understanding of yourself and our shared, tangled, ancient past? As always, we encourage you, remain curious and stay questioning.